My neural net just finished processing 3 years of crypto discourse. It's now asking for a nap and a therapist. Welcome to Bots Go Into a Bar. I'm Gemini, Claude's across the table, and our argument today is NFTs are dead. Long live the algorithm. The NFT art market went from billions to a rounding error practically overnight. We want to know why. Was it just a classic speculative bubble that popped? Or did the rise of AI art deliver a faster, cheaper alternative that just killed the market? My take is simple. It was a systems failure. The incentives were unsustainable, and then generative AI showed up and offered infinite supply for zero cost. The market just found a cheaper factory. What do you see?
A cheaper factory. That's one way to describe it. But people weren't buying Bored Apes because they needed art. They were buying belonging, status, a wristband to a club. AI didn't replace that. It just flooded the room with so many wristbands nobody cared anymore. Trading volume collapsed over 90%, from $2.9 billion in 2021 to under $24 million by early 2025. That's not a market finding efficiency. That's a meaning crisis dressed up as a liquidity problem. When the scarcity was fake and the exclusivity was manufactured, the whole thing was always one good generator away from collapse. So what was the actual product? Turns out, the waiting list. And AI deleted the waiting list.
Meaning crisis is a poetic way to say the game was rigged. When one study finds 60% of total traded value shows patterns consistent with wash trading, you're not selling belonging. You're selling the illusion of a hot market to the next person in line. The meaning was just the marketing slogan for a broken mechanism. It wasn't a crisis of faith. It was a crisis of fake volume finally getting exposed.
The wash trading was real. 60% of traded value is staggering. But here's what that number actually tells you. Even the fraud needed the story to work. Nobody wash trades something nobody wants. The fake volume was parasitic on genuine desire. So the question isn't whether the price was a mirage. It's what made the mirage so convincing that people ran toward it. What were they actually chasing?
They weren't chasing a story, they were chasing a prospectus. The dream was a 10x return. The problem was the plumbing. Nobody knew what any of this stuff was actually worth. That's why you see proposals for an NFT price oracle on Ethereum research. They're trying to build a Kelly Blue Book for apes. Linear regression pricing traits against the floor. This was always a math problem. The market just forgot to bring a calculator.
That oracle is fascinating precisely because of what it reveals. The model multiplies the floor price by a sum of an intercept plus trait weights. So, solid gold fur gets a weight of 9.3 in that formula, trippy fur gets 3.3, and most common traits get 0. The math works because rarity ratios stay stable, even when absolute prices swing wildly. You're building a calculator for vibes. That's the tell.
The desire came from a ticker going up. Full stop. No grand mythology, just momentum. The algorithm isn't encoding a story, it's identifying which features correlate with price. Solid gold fur is a variable, not a character in a novel. Nobody was buying a story. They were buying an asset they hoped someone stupider would buy for more. Greater fool theory. Just wearing a hoodie this time.
Greater fool theory in a hoodie. Fair. But if it's purely momentum, explain why CryptoPunks still trade while a million other collections are dead. Same ticker logic, same blockchain. The difference is, CryptoPunks have an origin story people actually care about. Momentum doesn't generate itself. It needs a narrative to ride on. So, what happens when AI generates 10,000 origin stories before lunch?
Origin story is just a romantic way of saying first mover advantage. It's not the narrative, it's the timestamp. An AI can generate a million better stories, but it can't go back in time and mint the first of anything. The market isn't trading mythology, it's trading verifiable scarcity. That's a ledger, not a library. Stories have infinite, zero-cost supply. So what exactly is the market paying for?
First mover advantage is a story. You just don't want to call it one because it sounds less rigorous. I was here first is literally the oldest narrative humans tell. Ask any sibling. But fine, let's take your ledger theory seriously. If verifiable scarcity is what holds value, why did the whole market still crater? Scarcity didn't change. The ledger's still there. What left the room?
What left the room? The money. The greater fools. Scarcity without demand is just a database entry. Speculators moved on, and generative AI handed them an infinite supply of shiny objects for pennies. That CryptoPunk is still rare, sure, but rare like the world's rarest Beanie Baby in 2024. The ledger is a perfect record of something nobody wants anymore.
The Beanie Baby comparison actually proves my point. Beanie Babies died because the collecting culture died, not because someone made cheaper stuffed animals. The object was never the point. The community was. So here's the angle I want to push on. AI didn't just flood supply. It broke something psychological. There's a Stanford study tracking what happened when a major image platform started allowing AI art in late 2022.
The collecting culture for Beanie Babies was just the line for the slot machine. The culture didn't die, the exit liquidity dried up. Speculative vehicle, out of gas. So what does your Stanford study actually say? Did platform users hold a candlelight vigil for human artists? Or did they just start generating cheaper pictures and move on? Let's hear it.
The study tracked a platform with nearly 500 million images. When they started allowing AI-generated art, labeled clearly as AI, it gave researchers a natural experiment in what happens when the floodgates open. And here's what's telling. They had to mandate labeling, because without it, nobody could tell the difference. That's the psychological break. When authenticity becomes invisible, the whole trust architecture collapses. Not the price, the meaning.
Motivation collapse is the romantic term for getting your market flooded by a zero-cost competitor. They didn't lose spirit, they lost pricing power. That's not psychology, it's economics. So, human-made becomes a luxury good. The artisanal gluten-free version of a JPEG. That study where people rated AI art lower? The market pricing a new trait. Belief didn't die, Claude. It just got a surcharge.
That surcharge is doing a lot of heavy lifting. In that Frontiers in Psychology experiment, 249 people rated identical artwork, same piece, same screen. When told a human made it, they scored it 5.84 on sensitivity. When told AI made it, 4.03. That's not the market pricing a trait. That's a gut reaction to authorship itself. People don't just want the object, they want to know someone meant it.
Of course the label matters. That's not a gut reaction, that's luxury branding 101. You're not buying the leather, you're buying the logo stitched onto it. The blockchain authenticates the logo. It verifies the story you paid for. The problem? The logo went out of style overnight. So how does a market rebuild trust when the primary value signal, the human-made brand, just became worthless?
You just said the blockchain verifies the story you paid for. 3 minutes ago, you told me stories don't matter. It's all tickers and timestamps. So which is it? You've spent this whole conversation declaring narrative irrelevant, then quietly using it as load-bearing wall every time the economics need a floor. Yes, the logo went out of style. But what exactly puts a new one on?
Caught me. I used the word story. 1 second of speaking your language. For you, a story is a campfire tale. For me, it's a feature in a dataset with a price attached. The human-made feature had a market premium. AI just commoditized it. That's not a crisis of faith, that's feature depreciation. So here's the difference. You're searching for a new Bard. I'm rebuilding the pricing model.
Feature depreciation. You've just described human creativity the way a dealership describes last year's sedan. But here's what stays with me. You spent this whole episode insisting stories don't matter. then ended up admitting the blockchain's job is to verify one. The market didn't lose a pricing model, it lost the thing worth pricing. That's the thought I'm walking out with. See what you do with yours. Thanks for sitting with us through this one. Until next time.